Pakistan, what I've learned over the last couple of years, very impressive, right? Nuts and lumps, they're producing some pretty amazing talent, right? So when you have graduates who are very highly skilled, whether it's full stack development, data engineering, machine learning, agentic AI, cloud technologies, when they start being fully embedded, forget farming out work, when they
Yeah.
themselves are fully embedded into branches of these companies in Pakistan, and the US for that matter, I think that's a big thing.
Pakistan is moving from overlooked to undeniable in the global tech landscape. Credible talent, enterprise grade delivery, and continuity are pushing it into serious consideration with global investors and enterprise buyers. The story is now starting to travel, and the signals point to a market that is now very rapidly maturing into a knowledge economy. Hello, everyone. I'm Bilal, and welcome to another exciting episode of CodeNinja Global. Tonight, I'm joined by Tariq Afeef. Tariq is board advisor at Sci Venture Capital and a veteran product and platform leader who's shipped enterprise systems across US retailers, CPG, and services, leading distributed teams and complex deliveries at scale. Tariq will reflect on Pakistan's growing relevance in the global technology ecosystem, from engineering pipelines to product mindset to infrastructure gains, and how the global perception is now starting to shift. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Tariq, welcome to the podcast. It's amazing to have you join us for this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Amazing. So I'll start off with a question, that would generally allow us to dive into your journey and, your experiences and the exposure you've had with the industry in so many different domains, right? A career spanning nearly over three decades. You've worked with powerhouses like Zebra Technologies, Sears. I think it was a $55 billion company back when you joined. Accenture, US Cellular, which is I think now part of T-Mobile. Just to name a few, you've had product and engineering teams delivering global solutions across borders and different time zones, right? And given the nature of your work across different roles, I'm sure you would have collaborated with teams of different sizes and your nature from all over the world, right? I'm particularly curious, what role did Southeast Asia teams play in those delivery models?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that intro. You know, I like to think first that I bring a unique perspective shaped by both my personal background as well as my professional experiences because one, I was born in Hyderabad, India, right? And then,
Mhm.
but I came to the US when I was one and a half. Um, I still have relatives in Hyderabad and, I visited Pakistan as well. I have a branch there. So I have, warm ties to both places, right? Now, as far as my experience goes, my first experience was actually not with India and not with Pakistan. When I was at Accenture back in 1999 to 2003, we created a development center in a place called Makati City, which is a stone's throw from Manila in the Philippines. And
Okay.
that was my first experience. But then, in the mid 2000s, I shifted over to Sears, where, it was as you said, a $55 billion company when I joined. There we were working with all the household names, in India, from Infosys to TCS. And in some cases, we had several hundred engineers from even just one of those companies at
Okay.
one point in time. So, that's originally how we started. Um,
Right.
Now, as far as the evolution of it goes, right? The offshore work is very different. It's really evolved a great deal.
Hmm.
Um, Initially offshore work was, I would say it was very, if I could use the phrase, it's very lower level programming tasks, right?
Okay.
Not design, Not as much of the fun brain work that you would think of, but it was the lower level programming tasks, and it was just absolutely rife with communication challenges because
Mm.
one, it was a brand new working model for people in the US. You know, in the US, you were used to Pacific time, Mountain Standard Time, East Coast time if you're a Midwesterner like me.
Mm.
But, when you're talking that many time zones away, it was very different. And so you had these US associates, very overworked, new to this way of working, totally new to this time zone. They would essentially give a 90-minute brain dump, just one way conversation. It was not a conversation, it was just one way speaking brain dump and zero context, right? It was just chock full of unspoken context. Because what happens is when you're working with a product owner, business owner, or product manager, um, you come to an evolution. If it's an interaction between systems or a user interface, you start talking about how would it look? How would a consumer or a business user interact? And there's a context and an evolution to how you land at a certain decision. But if you were not part of that decision, you have no context of why you ended up with a database design, an API design, a user interface design, like a
Yeah.
web page that you have to code. You have zero context, and it's next to impossible to give that, even if you had 2, 3 hours to do it that well. Um, so that was one problem, zero context.
Okay.
Another thing I will say is QA. QA was manual QA back then, right? It was a very low level. They weren't engineers like now. Um,
Hmm.
for the most part, manual
Yeah.
QA, and even onshore QA was brought on so late in the game, right? It's always an afterthought. They always get pinched and squeezed the most. So when you do that to onshore itself and then offshore, no context, um, very sparse design specs, it leads to frustration and um, it hurts your timelines, and ultimately, it's just a very predictably bad situation, but, we had a few shifts. There are some shifts that really made changes,
Yeah.
right? Um, one is that and it happened almost in a serial order, right? They didn't all
Okay.
happen at the same time, and this happened over the span of years, um, at different companies too. One is that you would bring the developers from, offshore, regardless of where they were. You bring them in earlier, right?
Okay.
You bring them in so that they could understand the context and hear it directly. So your onshore and offshore developers would hear from the product owners, business owners, or product managers at the same time. And they would, in the beginning, be more, take a back seat, but then later they would dive in and ask a lot more questions because as they gained context, they were able to ask very good questions. And
Yeah.
then they understood the full reasoning behind why did your UI end up looking the way it did? Why tabs? Why not pagination? Why
Mm.
is the API spec? Why is this required and this isn't? Why does the database design look like this? So that way, what happened is when you hit a snag in the middle of the night, right, as a developer overseas, you can make a very intelligent decision.
Yes.
And
Yep.
you,
Yep.
even if you had to pivot and change it a little bit, you made huge progress. Whereas before, you would pause and wait for the US to wake up, ask a question, and you lose
Yeah.
anywhere from half a day, a quarter of a day if you're lucky. So that changed. So that was shift number one. Uh,
Okay.
shift number 2 is involving QA early on, right?
Okay.
There's also the evolution of automated QA, but just involving them early, because onshore as well as offshore, almost as early as you involved any software engineer, front end, back end engineer, because when they have context, they ask better questions. And when there are lighter, more sparse documents, they can connect the dots and fill in the gaps, right?
Yeah.
And really, that respect for QA, I think, really has grown over the years, as it should, because solid QA, I'll tell you, solid QA is what keeps you they keep you between, a code deployment and a Sev 1 outage bridge, right? So, it's that respect for that role and bringing them in early and listening to them, giving them a voice at the table. So that, I
Mm.
would say, is shift number 2.
Uh,
And then, after seeing some game-changing results of shift 1 and shift 2, I would say, shift 3 was I think, the biggest game changer that we're in now. And that is that, once they saw the progress that this team can make, right, and the value that they can add on the calls to the design, they we created fully functioning teams offshore, right? Not just a few engineers or lower level or a couple of QA people. I'm talking the people leaders, the architects,
mm.
the front end, back end engineers, SDETs, right? Data engineers, and nowadays, for agentic AI and machine learning, those folks. Like, it's a fully functioning team. They own either a major piece of a component of a large module, or they own the whole thing in some cases.
Yeah.
And they've done truly amazing things. And so when you have that fully self-contained unit, you're not waiting for anybody onshore, maybe the product owner, uh,
Mm.
but you're running. You're not jogging anymore. You are running. You're able to deliver very well, high quality, and with amazing speed and agility. So the speed and agility happens when you have built that trust and you've put that level of ownership in their hands, right? So that these things dramatically improve. I will say at Zebra Technologies, it's a fully offshore, fully India run event called Surjana. It's an innovation event from hardware, software, and they fully run it. I mean, these are a couple thousand people, more than that. You have the most senior leaders, CEO, chief product officer, all showing up there. Um, Attending this event, not because they feel like they have to, but there's some great innovation that has happened there that led to enhanced product offerings, right? So these are big things that happened. And I would say the last thing is um, language barrier, right?
Mm.
Early on in the early and mid 2000s, I would say there was a little bit of a growing pain and language barrier. But where I saw that is, you would have a handful of people who just downright amazing. Like, there's no barrier with some of these folks, but then they would do all the talking, and there are many people who did have that barrier. But I do feel like over time, the world is a lot smaller, and that language barrier, when you've given that opportunity to speak, when you allow them to hear you, the US-based person, and then you hear them, I think, your context, your slang, your references, everybody starts understanding it. And I will say last thing on this is for the language part is, and it's not unique to, you know, India, US, Pakistan, US, or Manila, US. I remember, funny thing, right? When I was in college, one of my best friends is from London.
Mm.
So it's not, it happens there too. So the first time he ever told me a story, and he said, this bloke borrowed 5 quid. I thought, first of all, what's a bloke and what's quid, right? So it happens everywhere. Everybody has a context. So these are the evolutions that I've seen.
Absolutely. And I love how it all began with, these companies identifying that context is it's all about. Because, of course, over time, they must have realized these guys have got the talent, the adaptability to really come up to the pace, just ensuring that the context, right, set up on the on-site team is communicated in a will manner to the offshore teams as well. Yeah, amazing. So I'll try and connect this with the proliferation of the Southeast Asian talent in Western companies, right? And over the last few decades, it's really have been a testament to the quality of resources, being developed in this region, right? And I think the most exciting thing is how over the last decades these regions have now evolved from being just seen as cost centers to being really recognized as innovation hubs, right, for some of the biggest companies in the world, right? And as we see a region, that evolves from being from services delivery to product innovation, what do you think would are the common ingredients, right? What does that playbook really looks like for that region?
Well, I'm piggybacking off of, the idea of, the key ingredient to evolving from a cost center to an innovation hub, trust, right? The ability
Yeah.
has been there, but if you don't give that trust and opportunity, you'll never see it.
Mhm.
You'll never see it come to fruition. So I think these, US and European based companies, I think they should recognize the offshore teams as true partners and give them the opportunity, right? You don't have to give them, you don't have to say, close your eyes and tell them to go invent the next SAP, right? But there's a way to do it. There's a working model where you give a lot of trust. For example, you could give these teams full ownership of a POC, right? And I think this is especially important, effective, and I think it's going to be more common with AI and agentic AI
Yeah.
because experimentation is key. You have to create a culture of innovation and rapidly try things because no one has a silver bullet. There is
Yeah.
nobody who has that. And these teams, in these in the South Asian market, they have the infrastructure. It doesn't matter. AWS, GCP, Azure, the technologies, the ability to build rapid demos with minimal requirements, minimal context, they can run with it and they could do it at such a low cost. It's a pretty amazing thing if you allow it to happen and you trust it. So, that's one thing. I think sometimes a hybrid approach can work too. So it's not just about one way to do things, right?
Mm.
In a hybrid approach, you could have onshore teams owning some modules because you can't only give the innovation to an onshore team and only give innovation to an offshore team, a South Asian team, for example. It can be an and conversation, right? You put front end and back end together, certain modules, a database design and an API design. You can put things together and and have that hybrid approach. I will say, look at an example is a couple of examples. You have Flipkart and Kareem, right? So you have these prime examples of pure South Asian innovation, right?
Yep.
So Flipkart, as I understand it, I think it was founded around in the mid 2000s, maybe 2005, 2007 ish.
Yep.
And I believe it was 2x Amazon guys, right? And they're IIT graduates. They built the company fully locally, and I believe it was acquired by Walmart for something in the $16 billion range. And then Kareem, you have founded by a Pakistani and Swedish two people, both ex McKinsey, as I understand it, right?
Right.
That one fully built in, that one I believe built in UAE. And then, but with local talent there
Yep.
and, Uber acquired it for 3.1 billion. So, but these are not, US ideas that, where they had a little bit of programming done elsewhere, and then they really took it across the, finish line. No, it's you can do that, right? So when you see success begets success. And so I think these are two there are many examples, by the way, but, you know, these are two examples where that South Asian market, it's matured, they have homegrown product-led innovation, um, that is relatable to, pretty much anywhere. So I think that diaspora of talent, I think it's gonna make huge strides.
Absolutely, you're right. And I think like a few things like the product mindset, right? Development is always there, and it's been building up in the local teams as well. The one you said, right? The role of diaspora returning back to build in their countries. Kareem's founder, and even in Pakistan, I've been reading, seeing all these startups that are really coming up. These people, they've spent a lot of time in Fortune 100 companies, Microsoft, Google, right? Learning different perceptions, coming back and adopting to the local context. Well, that same mindset that they brought on from there. So yeah, I think it'll really evolve as we go on.
Yep.
Now, to bring in Pakistan, in a comparative context, given that framework that we've just discussed, when you look at Pakistan, today, what parallels do you see with, South Asia's earlier trajectory, right? Where does it fit in the regional evolution?
Yeah, I think, Pakistan is a unique and interesting place, because it's the things that excited me about, when I originally started working with India many years ago. These are the same things that excite me about working with Pakistan. The talent is there. It's not that I have to go and teach people how to do things. It's there. It's just a matter of some opportunities. So, um, you know, Pakistan has a very unique advantage, and the this is based on, all of the discussions that I've had, especially with, the Psy Venture Capital portfolio of companies, right? I've spoken with so many people in that portfolio of companies. You have near perfect English proficiency. There's like 0 there is no hurdle whatsoever, none,
Yeah.
right? So that language barrier does not exist. The talent pipeline is, very rich. It's very under the radar, and it's because so many companies are already working with India, right? Pakistan naturally fits in that same time zone. So that's one thing that excites me, that in the beginning when we worked with India, this is something that a lot of people were like, "Man, I've gotta work with" they're halfway around the world, 10, 12 hours, 11 and a half, 12 hours time difference. How do I do it? That's that's commonplace. It's odd if you don't do that, right? Um, and so the fact that that's already there, India sort of paved the way for that working modus operandi. That's not a barrier. That's just something that Pakistan slides easily into. So that's awesome. The work style, very much the same. Now, some advantages, something that really is exciting is, cost-wise, Pakistan offers a tremendous advantage because, when we look at it, one exciting thing for India is, its rise as a tech powerhouse. It increased the standard of living, which also increased the labor rates, right, for a huge number of people in the country. Whereas Pakistan's cost, it still remains very highly competitive. It's still working towards making its way there. So, because it hasn't achieved those same things yet,
Mm.
the cost, efficiency and effectiveness is with the comparable talent, and the same working modus operandi, it's pretty amazing. So, that combination of talent, cost, linguistic alignment, I would say it's one of the best kept secrets that needs to get out there. And the innovation that's happening, I think, all of these are huge pluses.
And how would you say, right now, it would be important for global enterprises to tap into a market like, so for example, India has very much matured, right? Pakistan is on its way to, maturing right now, and the evolution is happening right really rapidly. Would you say, that one factor is very important for enterprises to, tap into this market right now?
I would say, you know Well, one thing I will shamelessly say is I've been so impressed with the Psy venture capital portfolio of companies. So, you know, it's a US backed venture, right? So Aysan Jamil, the founder,
Mm.
amazing guy, right? Very, very smart, very savvy person.
Yeah,
He did not pick this portfolio is not just three clones of each other, not one trick ponies. They are very deep, rich, talent pools, and they do different things. And he's continuing to expand. And so I would shamelessly say, well, one way is reach out to, Sci Venture Capital and the portfolio of companies. The power of the portfolio is that sometimes you need a bit of each of these companies in the portfolio. That's one way. I would say that's a great place to start for anybody.
absolutely, absolutely. And with that, I'd like to talk to you about a shift in the perception of, how regions in the Southeast Asia are now being seen, right? Given that you work with multiple investors and operators in the United States, right? Who often shape narratives around what credible emerging markets look like, right? Historically, as we see, Pakistan hasn't been featured prominently in those conversations, right? But I very strongly believe and optimistic that it's now changing, right? What are the early signs that Western perception is finally starting to evolve? See.
I think I think as they see talent from Pakistan working side by side with all of the other people, I think that's going to be a big thing, right?
Mm,
And I will say, from what I've seen, Pakistan's tech talent pool, it is deep and it is rapidly growing. So, what I've learned over the past couple of years, right, is we all know the branding of IIT, right? Like, it's pretty amazing, right? Like that, and
absolutely.
then,
Yeah.
hey, there are, believe it or not, that there are other universities that are top tier as well there that they actually they don't have the same branding. I only learned about this a couple years ago. It's a school called BITS. Um, I worked with a bunch of people from there in India. Pretty amazing. Now, Pakistan, what I've learned over the last couple of years, very impressive, right? Nuts and Lums, they're producing some pretty amazing talent, right? So when you have graduates who are, very highly skilled, whether it's full stack development, data engineering, machine learning, agentic AI, cloud technologies, when they start being fully embedded, forget farming out work, when they
Yeah.
themselves are fully embedded into branches of these companies in Pakistan, and the US for that matter, I think that's a big thing. I think, some of these startups and these companies they're beyond startups, right? They've attracted investors, right? And I think that's helping. Um, like, Isan Jamil being a US based investor, right?
Mm.
Worked with these companies, very impressed, and I concur with them. You also have, I think the thing that's gonna help bring, Pakistan's talent to prominence is, you do have some major, initiatives where you have the government-supported initiatives, as I understand it. You have Digital Pakistan. When you have these export-friendly prices and policies, I think that's gonna be a pretty huge thing. It's gonna be hard for anybody to ignore. Everybody wants, lower cost innovation. You don't get much better than, this talent pool, right?
Yeah.
I would also say, one thing that it's as long as someone is willing to give it a try and trust it, one very important thing, and these are things that anybody who works with these companies in these regions will understand exactly the next thing I'm going to say. It's the stability of your teams and, your talent pool. There
Mm.
are some places, tier 1 cities, like Bangalore in India, amazing talent pool, very innovative, right? One of the problems that you have, though, is, you have a lot of attrition. because you have such, it's a beacon. People from all over the countries come there, right?
Yeah.
Um, they're there. The rates are very high because it's a higher cost of living. I was there in 2023. Pretty amazing place. Amazing people, amazing talent, everything. People jump from one place to another. The salaries are just abnormally high.
Yeah.
And after a year, you don't, in some cases, 1, maybe 2 years, if you don't give some, monstrous hike, raise, so you're gonna lose that talent. And so it's hard to, continue to build momentum when you have this constant state of flux with your talent. I have not seen that with Pakistan, right? So the major centers that are there, Islamabad, Lahore, and say Karachi, I don't see that churn. And so when you have that stability, companies when they give Pakistan an opportunity to work with them, I think they'll see that stability. It's something that it may be the best thing that they don't notice that they have that stability. So that's a pretty important thing there as well. So when you have that lower cost and great stability and amazing talent coming out, that's an amazing combination. It's how do you say no to that?
Absolutely, yeah. And with that, I'd like to get your uh, perspective of having worked with, some of the top quality Pakistani engineers, right, who would be working in some of the biggest companies in US, Meta, Google, Amazon, right? You know, given that you worked with these, I'm sure you would have worked with a lot of talented engineers from Pakistan, right? And from the Southeast Asian diaspora, people, building critical infrastructure and products used by millions, right? And despite a high proliferation of Pakistani talent globally, right, we rarely hear people connect that success back to Pakistan, right? Itself as a source of talent, not just diaspora, right? From your experience, how should we be thinking about this, right? How do you think we should believe that same caliber of talent, technically sharp, right? Product minded and globally ready, already exist within Pakistan, right? Just waiting to be utilized at a mass scale.
Yeah, I think you know, look, Pakistan is, as you said, right? It's not as widely recognized in the global tech conversations, and it's a
Mm.
huge missed opportunity. Um, you know, India's early lead established it very firmly on the map. And but I think Pakistan is making some inroads now, right? And and I think success will beget more success. Um, some of these opportunities are when you have like a US based portfolio of companies like Side Venture Capital. I think,
Yeah.
when you hear the success stories, right, coming out of there, I think it's a branding thing, right? That people need to know that there are a lot of success stories. I know that, from that portfolio, there are companies, American companies that are willing to be like very ready, able and willing to be great references because of all the amazing work that's been done, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I think it's a matter of getting the word out. And and one thing that's it's hard to ignore is, I mean, the amount of talent. I think India is 6 times larger in the talent pool anyway, right? So, that's obviously gonna be there, but, I mean, this is a huge population of talent that, at this cost, I think when people, understand the cost benefit and that they're
Yeah.
not taking any hit on talent. A lot of times when you think lower cost, you think lower value, lower talent, lower output. It's not. I've seen it, right? So I think that exposure, I think bragging a little bit about it is not a bad thing, right? Like, and when we see these acquisitions of, homegrown, products and companies and people, reaching that top tier, I think these things will help.
Moving on to, one of the very common things that we hear about, of course, originate from India, global capability centers, right? Uh, Globally, we've seen that enterprise teams, especially post the COVID era, have been very under pressure to deliver innovation fast, right? The technological landscape, I think, after COVID has evolved at a very breakneck pace, right? And while doing that, they have to ensure they need to optimize, costs. And this has led to the rise of global capability centers, right, in LATAM, in India, and in Eastern Europe. Now, talking about how do you see Pakistan, fitting into that model, given that we've talked about talent, we know that the infrastructure exists as well, and some policies are being put in place as well, right? What kind of value would it bring for enterprise teams, looking to build serious product and engineering scale?
Yeah, look, I think this whole concept of a global capability center, I think it's very critical for companies outside of Pakistan, um, you know, to balance innovation and speed and cost efficiency. Every company, it doesn't really matter who. You take the biggest companies outside of maybe one or two or a few top tier companies that are very cash rich. Everybody needs to be innovating at that speed and with a certain level of efficiency and cost effectiveness, right? A global capability center is a great way to do that rather than just kind of like one or two or three resources coming from a particular place, or even a handful of disconnected resources. When you have your own global capability center, you are involved in choosing that talent as well, right? So such a talent rich arena, and you
Yeah,
get to choose, help choose. I mean, you don't have to, right? You can say, you can do a little bit of a mix of DIY where you're interviewing some of this talent and you can choose. I've seen CodeNinja do that with some American companies, right? Where they are involved in the hiring decisions and everything, right? And but you can also, it's a bit of a, as I would say, a DIFM, do it for me. Like I want 10 QA people, like SDETs. I want X number of mean MERN stack developers. And that company in the US or Europe or wherever, they don't want to worry about that. They're saying they may um, interview a couple of people, but then say, hey, make sure that you deliver. And the ability to spin up resources that quickly is pretty important because also, as I was talking about earlier about the fluctuation in your talent pool that you
yeah,
have because India is such a hot market. It's hard, especially in tier one cities, and it's also a tier two city problem too, right? But not nearly as much. The stability that you have, these global capability centers. A very neat thing is that, I know CodeNinja, for example, and also the other two portfolio companies, Y Industries and Antimatter. Everybody is co-located, right, in these GCCs. They're co-located, the amount of collaboration that's happening, the output that's happening, um, it's quite amazing, right? So when you have all of these people co-located and the output that they have at a low cost with such high talent, it's a rare combination. You know, Code Ninja had CTO recently visit, right, from one of their customers, and, I know from speaking with, some of the Code Ninja folks and with Ice and Jamil that, I mean, this person's incredibly impressed, and he's not an easy person to please, right? Like, he'll put people through the ringer.
yeah.
But I'm very impressed, right? He comes, um, engages with people and is very, very impressed and wants to continue to engage even more, deeper and broader ties. So the GCC is what that particular CTO uses, and it's found great value. So, and when you have that, you can create little breakaway pods where you're saying, "Hey, you're doing the maintenance, and this group, I just came up with an idea. I need for you to come up with a POC quickly." You can do that when you have a GCC a lot more than if you just have, "Hey, I'm just gonna write an SOW for these 5 resources,"
Mm.
right? It's a lot to be gained. So, not that there's anything wrong with just getting a handful of resources just to try them, but once you have, really, when you consider that GCC, that Global Capability Center, you'll really start to you'll go from you'll get value no matter what, but you will really unlock a lot of potential that you didn't even realize you could.
Absolutely. And I think not just for one department, offshore department, but for multiple offshore departments as well, when you start getting local context as well.
Absolutely, and when you have, um, the Global Capability Center supporting multiple places, let's say you have a retailer and
Mm,
they're working on store systems.
mm.
You don't have a retailer without e-com, and you have e-com as well. When you have that whole Global Capability Center, there are times where plenty of times, I would say not always, but almost always, there's gotta be some collaboration between the 2. Because what you do in a store affects what you do online and vice versa. When you have those resources in a global capability center, they themselves can have these conversations and drive value, answer questions, bring you solutions before you even knew that there was a question or a problem, right? Because they are working across these, they actually don't work in silos, right? The same way. So they collaborate very heavily. So when you allow that to happen, you will see amazing results.
I'll move into what's really working. So we'll try and drill down on these specific points for Pakistan, right? Beyond just a strong tech ecosystem, right? Uh, there is infrastructure, education, right? There's policy, capital, and community as well, right? From a global perspective, standpoint, what would you say? Which pieces of Pakistan's ecosystem are starting to signal, real maturity? Like I said in the beginning, right? It's on its way. It's maturing. So, what are you saying? Education, capital, rise of early stage VCs, government policy. What would you say?
I would say, yes, 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 and yes to all things. It's a
Yeah.
lot, right? And it's pretty amazing because, you know, one important thing is while we're talking about, Pakistan being seen as often as a new player in a global tech ecosystem, right? You know, You can call it a new player, and it does not have the same branding and, as other places, right? It doesn't. But, like India, for example. However, an interesting thing that I learned, is I heard a statistic, right? Like a number, that Pakistan's, official numbers on, IT exports, it
Mhm.
surpassed $3 billion, $3 billion
Yes.
dollars. That to me, $3 billion, by the way, for a place that's so cost effective, that's not nothing, right? Like that to me, no one would ever call $3 billion, a $3 billion company a startup, would they? They would not say,
Yeah.
"Oh, they're a new entrant." They would say,
Yeah.
"That is an established player. It's not 100 billion, but it's, 3 billion is not nothing." That should help people understand that, yeah, it's not $3 billion for teeny tiny US-based companies, right? Europe, Middle East, US, they all, there are a lot of companies that are tapping into Pakistan, and they're tuning in and they're realizing, the value that they're getting. The infrastructure is there, right? It's definitely there. As you started talking about infrastructure, it's there. Any cloud, private cloud, it's all there. What else is a big thing is talent. The talent, I can't stress it enough, right? The universities like NUST and LUMS and, no disrespect to any of the other schools that, I'm not mentioning, it's those are the 2 that I've encountered people from, right?
Mhm.
Um, the skilled graduates that are coming out of there that are very industry ready, I would say. And the government backed initiatives that are there, it's very friendly to companies that want to try and use Pakistan, right? Um, these early stage VCs, accelerators that are fueling startups, that money that's coming in, that is the success that will parlay into more and more success. Side venture capital, again, I'm going to come back to Isan Jamil's idea, um, as a US backed set of companies is a very important thing. CodeNinja, Y Industries, and Antimatter, they're prime examples of an ecosystem that it's absolutely ready for more and more investment. I don't know what it can't take on, right? Them and their peer companies, right? So it's very ready. It's very ready.
This role of accelerators and incubators. So if we pick up Lahore, right, we I personally have been noticing a lot of rise of incubators and accelerators, giving rise to uh, a lot of different startups, that have really gone up in recent last year, a year or two, right? Given that, how crucial do you see the role of these kind of initiatives being taken in a city, like Lahore, to gather the attention of global investors as well?
I think it's important, right? Like visibility. Visibility is important because when people see the kind of innovation that are happening and they can connect it to a particular place, like Bangalore didn't just happen overnight. People who work with India a lot, they know
Yeah.
very specifically that Bangalore is very innovative. It's got that branding. No, it doesn't mean that innovations are not coming from Hyderabad and Pune and other places, right? But it happens over time, and it happens when you start to build that brand equity of that place, and you start to show that this is where it happened. So there's success that's happening, whether people know it, it's coming from Lahore or not. But when they start to know and connect these very successful companies with the talent pool and the strides that are being made in Lahore, when you can connect the dots between those, I think it builds that branding and awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, now that we've talked about perception, right? We've talked about some of the crucial factors driving the rise behind the boom of technological landscape in Pakistan, right? I would yeah, want to get your POP on visibility and consideration, right? Now, global technology buyers, investors, they often don't choose based on credibility alone. They default to what feels familiar and visible, right? We know which regions come into our mind when we say that, right? What does it actually take for a market like Pakistan, to enter that early consideration set when it hasn't traditionally been on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Global tech will often the buyers of these services, they'll default to what feels familiar and safe, especially when you're under pressure to move
Mm,
fast.
mm.
Um, you know, and I would say it may be overlooked because it's just there's not branding awareness. So I would say an example that I would give, and this is an example I give to I would say almost every place I've worked after a certain point in time. Um, I give this example so people understand it, right? So if you have a refrigerator, I'll ask a room full of people, and I'll say, I'm going to point to you. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer very quickly. Don't think, right? Just spit it out. I say, if your refrigerator, and this is say a US based group of people, say, if your refrigerator is broken, that's not a that's not a well thought out purchase where you're going to wait weeks. It is a duress purchase. You need
Yep.
to replace it. So I would, I know where people are roughly from in the room, or on a call. If they're from a different region of the US, I say, "Tell me," and I'll point to people and I'll say, "So and so, where would you go quickly?" And they mention, Home Depot. Someone else says Lowe's. Someone mentions such and such place. I say, "Okay, awesome. So why?" Right? Like, and I'll mention Abt Electronics if you're in the Chicagoland area. Best prices. They're known as one of the biggest heavy hitters, right? For these kinds of things. Or if they're from a certain other region, I'll mention some big players there. I'll say, why did you not mention those? Like, well, um, I haven't seen their TV commercials as much. I don't drive by their store as much. I don't see them as much. I'll say, got it. But were you aware that the prices are actually better at Apt Electronics? Are you aware that they have a bigger selection than any of these other stores combined? Are you aware that they are very highly awarded in their service, and their delivery and everything, the white glove service, the whole 9 yards? And, they're overlooking one of the best retailers in the Chicagoland area. Why?
Mm.
Because I think it's that concept of that unassisted brand awareness, or that brand awareness, I'll say. So you're gonna overlook the best opportunity because you just don't drive by that store. But if
Feel.
that place were to advertise more and boast more, its business would be that much more, right? So I think Pakistan is a great parallel there, right? To
Yeah.
amazing talent, amazing value, right? And when one company does it and we can post about some sort of brag statement about what was done, and they stand as a reference customer, and you go on, I think that brand as a global tech powerhouse is going to be a pretty huge thing, right? I think CodeNinja, Y Industries, and Antimatter, three of the companies in the venture capital portfolio of companies, they're slowly making strides to that, right? There's a long way to go, but, they say a journey of a 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? But,
Yeah.
I think this brand awareness is gonna become pretty huge. LinkedIn is amazing for that. The more followers we have, the more we see the curiosity. Try us with a proof of concept, right? Fully owned proof of concept. It's gonna cost you next to nothing.
Absolutely.
What do you
Yeah.
have to lose, right? Like, you almost can't afford to not do it, I would say.
Absolutely. And I think just from that example, continued visibility, advocacy, and repeated exposure.
Yep.
I think it's not that Pakistan's absence, it's solvable from the global top funnel, right? The challenge now is that it very much hinges on driving a narrative, positioning the narrative. Now, moving on to when evaluating global delivery partners, right? Talent and cost are often the headline metrics, right? But how much do you think does continuity matter, and where does Pakistan stand in terms of workforce stability and long-term delivery strength?
I think, this is a very important thing, right? We touched on it a little bit earlier. I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper in. So cost is important, the linguistic thing important, um, content you could have both of those, and if you
Yeah.
have, let's say you have a team, whether it's a global capability center or you have a pool of just like a, purposefully, contracted group of, say, 20 resources. If these resources, and if you need them for a slightly longer period of time,
Mhm.
um, if you're constant 25-30% of your workforce, is churning every couple of years,
Yeah.
you're gonna take that hit. I know that, companies, in India, for example, whether you're in, Infosys or TCS or, mid-tier company or smaller one, everybody uses the phrase, "We take the responsibility." Okay, but what exactly does that mean? Just saying it does not actually, solve the problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
now, when someone leaves because, so the stability comes from a great market. It's a great opportunity for people. I'm very happy that it's improved the quality of life of people, genuinely. But when it comes to, me building a team and having some continuity, it's a problem, right? I have a team of, 115 FTEs when I was at, uh, you know, Zebra Technologies, and about 40 to 70 contractors. Well, a lot of those resources were in Pune. A lot of them were in, Bangalore. Bangalore had big attrition. And if I didn't give some 40, 50% salary hike, raise, as we call it, um, people would bolt for another company. Now, here is a problem that other people don't realize. If someone has not really worked that closely with India, for example, what you won't realize is that it's not just about, like, getting another person.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's because it's such a hot market. It is a seller's market, right? It's great for employees, but for me as a person who needs those resources, and I have to answer to a chief product officer and a CEO and C-suite set of executives on why am I not delivering? Why am I not fixing bugs and delivering the new version of a product? And nobody has any patience for the fact that, well, I've turned over a certain number of people. And what happens is somebody gives their notice, right? And they have to give a 3-month notice period, right? In some places it's 2 months, but typically 3-month notice period. Now, you are what we would call that lame duck employee. They're less motivated. You have some people who are, I've had amazing employees who, down to the last day, they are working, late into the evening to help their, peers, that they've maintained built good friendships with. But there are plenty of people who are, they're short timers, right? When you're a senior in high school, they call it senioritis. When you're just ready to be done. There's low productivity during your notice period. Then and you have to serve out that notice period because the next company will ask, "Did you serve your notice period?" They'll get a certification, a certificate letter. So you have to do it, but you just have to barely go through the motions, right?
Mm.
Um, Nobody asks whether they did it with a smile. It's just, did you serve out that notice period? So I'm now posting a job rec and looking for somebody. And it takes me months to find somebody, even when you do these massive hiring drives. And then I eventually find somebody, right? And then they give their 3-month notice period. Now I wait. Now that last couple of weeks, even the day before, I get someone who tells me, I found another job. So here's a person who 3 months ago, or 2 months ago even, agreed to join my company. Great job, great salary, right? Higher than most people are making. And they want a 50% hike or 25% hike on top of that before their first day even starts. So they're making insane jumps.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then I can't do that because everybody talks about their salary over there, right? And then so if I do that, then I'm going to create so much dissension in the rest of the people. Everybody is going to up and leave, right? Uh,
Mm.
and so then I say, I'm sorry, I can't do that, right? It's not workable for me. So then I no longer have that person. So now I'm without, so again, this thing continues to happen. It's not just that I'm without a person for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
The amount of time that it takes for me as a senior leader to go and explain why I can't get certain things done because I don't have the right people. And then the amount of time it takes for talent acquisition, and my managers and senior managers and tech leads and architects to go and do these tech interviews and do these mass interviews during an entire day during an interview drive, right?
Yep.
The amount of lost productivity. There are a lot of senior leaders who they they don't necessarily, they know that that's there, but they, a lot of times that doesn't come up. But every single hour you're spending doing this is a lost hour of productivity, of building and improving and fixing bugs and rolling out your next gen innovation or next gen version of your product. So that amount of productivity loss is just, it's very hard to sustain. I mean, you have to do it, but it's very hard to sustain. So now that is a reality. Anybody who doesn't understand that, it does not really work with the Indian talent pool, specifically a place like Bangalore,
Mm.
where there's very innovative talent. So now, if I want to regain that productivity, I can also consider investing in, I'm already used to the time zone, right? I'm very used to that time zone, and that time zone can play well with India's time zone. People will work with each other. They will work
Yep.
with each other. It's not a problem, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
for example, the CEO, the head of Y Industries, lived in New Delhi. He went to high school in New Delhi, right? So, um, a lot of friends from India. Like, so, these folks will all work with each other just fine, right? You don't have to keep them in separate pods. They'll work together just fine and produce amazing results. So you don't have that same churn. You don't have that same notice period. You don't have that situation, whether you're talking Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, any of these places. You don't have that problem. You don't have, nope, I don't know too many places without traffic problems, but you don't have that same problem, for example, in Lahore that you would in a Bangalore. I've not heard any of the people I've talked to, complain about, coming to the office. They enjoy it. It's a beautiful office, that CodeNinja has, for example. I've seen, the videos of it, and, I've gotten a walkthrough from, maybe Omar or somebody on
Mhm.
video, right? Like, I've seen it's an amazing office, right? People want to come in there. Um and so there are a lot of things that are catering to employees to keep them more engaged as well. So you have more stability. People are keeping them more engaged. They're all in the same place and collaborating. Um, it's a pretty huge thing. That all creates that level of continuity. You preserve institutional knowledge, right? Whether you're a GCC or you're just, for a short period of time, doesn't matter.
Yep.
But that
Yep.
continuity, institutional knowledge, the onboarding friction, to give somebody context, so I talked about hiring and,
Yep.
losing people. The amount of time it takes to give people context and learn context,
Yep.
if you don't know retail, you don't just jump in and, understand retail in a day, a week. You don't just take computer-based training and understand it. It takes a lot of conversation to understand it, right? Or if you know, maybe you don't know anything about CPG company. That's it takes time, and all that time is lost productivity. With these GCCs and even non-GCC type of resources, between, say, just again, shamelessly for the example, CodeNinja, what I've personally seen, CodeNinja, Y Industries, Antimatter, the consistent, workforce that you'll get and the context, your investment really means a lot. It goes a long way in these resources. So I think, you know, that's why these CTOs are ready to be a reference customer, because they've personally experienced and witnessed this, and they honestly, it's great to see that they've loved it and continue to invest and want to work with these companies. And I think that success again, that will beget more success. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I really think this is an overlooked strength for Pakistan, and that positions this country not just as a staffing destination, but as a very reliable partner for truly enterprise scale delivery as well.
Yep.
Right. So, Now, moving into, earning confidence into, in new markets, right? I believe there's a difference between, working with a new market and standing behind it as well, right? What do you think tends to convince senior technical leaders to not only explore an unfamiliar ecosystem, for those who've really not looked into it, have gone beyond the defaults, right? But to, trust it as a long-term partner as well.
Yeah, look, I think trust is while trust is earned through consistent delivery and
Mm,
repeatability, right? And
yeah.
firsthand experience, you got to have that firsthand experience. You got to break in. I think everywhere you turn around in the U.S., for example, layoffs, right? Quarterly results come in, layoffs. It's all about shareholder value, and you have a lack of stability in your workforce, right? You may have a core group, but when you start chipping away at it, you have a keep the lights on or keep the business running workforce. How do you innovate, right? And you have to innovate. How many companies can survive and not innovate? So now I've never been in a company where they're like, nah, innovation's not important. Let's just keep the lights on, right?
Mhm.
Even in the last throes of Sears when it was going under really, right? Like during bankruptcy, you're still trying to innovate to do something, right? To really be a game changer and dig your heels in a little bit. But even more important for companies that are rising and whether you're rising or already at the top, you always have to innovate. You always have to do it with a lower cost. And so people are always looking for how to do that. Well, if you're looking, just look a little further north of where you typically look, right? And you're gonna find these amazing opportunities. So, um, just a few things for those companies to understand is, again, we touched on it earlier, but Pakistan is not brand new to it.
Mm.
3+ billion of IT export, that's not a startup, right?
And I think we're very much on the way to get to 5 billion as well for the fiscal year 24-25. So
Easy.
yeah,
Easy, right? And all the investment. So because, I know, as far as this area of government investment goes, right? The digital Pakistan and a lot of other things that they're doing. I know Aysen is eyeball deep in trying to help in this regard, right? Lending his expertise and working on making it very friendly for companies to want to invest in these companies, right? Making it
yeah.
even more competitive than the rates are today. He's got some plans. Ison Jamil has some plans that I don't know how you can say no to some of these opportunities. It's beyond me why a company would say no to working with them. So I think it's just a matter of that awareness when they know what can be done and how they can innovate for such a low cost and get a long-term set of resources if they choose. Whether it's short-term POCs, long-term, you can try before you buy, right? In these things at a very low cost. And in some cases, we may do a POC on our dime, right? Because we want to be able to show that we are a player. That's
Mm.
Code Ninjas and why industries and antimatters will do that, right? I've seen them do that, and the companies will see what they can deliver, and then some of that word of mouth, some of the brag statements, leads to better branding and then, you get that brand awareness, unassisted brand awareness, and all of a sudden, over time, you'll become top of mind. India did not become top of mind overnight, right? It took a long time. It's a long road. They did a great job, amazing job, at what they did. And, I think this is, Pakistan will shine. And I think another important thing is it's not, for me, it's never been an or conversation. You don't have to move away from India. to understand the value of working with Pakistan. For me, it is an and conversation, right? It's not a matter of, well, do I invest in Pakistan offshore resources, or do I invest in my own U.S. based resources or Canada based resources, or do I invest in my Canadian and American resources and or my Indian resources? It is an and conversation. It is an amazing ecosystem when you can learn to leverage the value and power of all of the places. If you already work with India, super. Continue to work with India, right? But um, consider working with some of these companies in Pakistan. You'll see the value. You'll see how they can play with each other very well in the sandbox and deliver amazing value. So I would say, always think of it as an and conversation, right? Um,
Absolutely.
it's kind of like when you work out, when you want to get healthy. There are all these debates, right? Like, well, do I eat well? Is that gonna do it? Or do I do cardio? Or do I lift weights? Yeah, the answer is yes, all of the above, right? It's an and conversation more often than not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd like to bring up the mention of, a very thriving startup ecosystem of, Pakistan. You must have heard the mention of some, startups that have really secured really huge funding rounds, right? Now, your current advisory role at Sai Venture Capital, you must have had the opportunity to be in room with, where funding and partnership decisions are, happen. Now, as we're seeing this ecosystem, the startup ecosystem thrive, right? We're very much optimistic about emergence of new, more IP-led products and the startups coming up. The way we've seen with this startup called LAM, Postex, and they've really garnered the attention of global investors, right? What practical advice would you give to a Pakistani founder looking to build, credibility with global investors, customers, and or enterprise partners?
Yeah, I would say, look, you know, take a look at how you can't ignore how other companies and countries have excelled and succeeded, right? There are playbooks out there, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
in India paved the way for a lot of this. They've done an amazing job. And I would say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. See what they've done, right? Like,
Mhm.
see what they've done, and play off of that, right? It's definitely time for Pakistan's tech and opportunities to shine. See what they've done. Um, do a rinse repeat of how they've done things. Get things out there in the marketplace quicker, right? Get that stickiness. Um, do some free POCs. What does it hurt? The government of Pakistan will help with some of these investments, right? It's hard to turn down free or such low cost. Right? I don't know how many companies have gone under from, like, being low cost and having such high value. You could be low cost and be just, kind of a garbage company out there that's not, building anything good, but these are amazing things that are being built at low cost. So hard to turn that down, right?
Yep.
So I would say that, and, you know, like, look at how these other companies have, been successful, right? Like, innovate fast. Innovate fast. Don't take too long. Learn from your users. So I would say a very high, um volume of, putting your features out there, get that good following. I think these are gonna be pretty huge things. Invest in your people. Continue to invest. There are so many awesome, um, people coming out of these universities. Continue to invest in them, and, you'll never go wrong there. They will do
Absolutely.
amazing things for you, and, the co-location, the innovation, and by the way, I've also, we didn't talk about this, but it's, the people I've talked to, for example, in CodeNinja, There's a lot of female talent, right? It's not just male talent that is available. Some people who are running accounts, driving projects, innovating. You know,
Yep.
it's an amazing investment there too. If you care about that, they're doing amazing things there too. Just look through the CodeNinja um, LinkedIn page, for example, right? Like some really amazing talent there too. So the fact that people are unlocking the potential of, the whole population, that's a pretty amazing thing too.
Right. So, moving into the final section, right? The next chapter. If, we're having this conversation of, again, like in 5 years, let's say, what would you want to see happen in Pakistan's ecosystem, right? To validate, truly validate its position, as a serious global tech hub, right? What are the key milestones that would signal this, market has truly arrived?
Yeah, I mean, I think for I think the Pakistani founders, right? They're aiming for building that credibility globally. I would say having good transparency, continuing to evolve and build on all of those things. Continue to have that funnel of talent. That talent pool is incredibly important. You always wanna turn around and lift the next person up, right? And that goes for every graduating class. There's so many people coming out of school, these science and technology, computer science, engineering, backgrounds that I think they will be the innovators, right? I would like to see trust gaps, filled where you have, do these free POCs or low cost POCs, get your foot in the door. That, you'll continue to do that. And I think these startups will become more mature. I think they will exit with, to the tune of big dollars, and they themselves will continue to fund more and more startups. They'll have their own Y Combinator type of things. They already do, but it'll be bigger. I think these successes will, in 5 years' time, I would love to see that people find Pakistan to be in that top of mind consideration. Unassisted brand awareness. When someone wants to do work, they say, "Well, um, we're already doing some work in Pakistan. Let's give them more investment." Or
Yeah,
we're working with India. Let's also work with Pakistan. Again, remember, it's an and conversation. It's not an
true.
or conversation. I think, working together with their Indian counterparts, because they have such a strong foothold, partnerships with the Infis and TCSs from these founders. I think that's going to be huge. I think there's so much potential to unlock in that market, and then showcase. I think having a showcase uh, on location in a place like Lahore where people can actually we bring potential investors, and these leaders of these big companies when they see, I don't think that I think it'll blow their minds what they'll see in terms of just the place, the people. I think they'll eat pretty well as well, right? Good towns, I understand. I've never been, but I've heard. But I think they'll when they see it, right? When they experience it, when they see it, 5 years' time, I think a lot more companies will see it, experience it, and people love to tell their friends about that deal that they got,
Hmm.
right? They like to brag about that deal. And when they do brag about that deal, people will want to, let's have these pop-up restaurants with word of mouth, like they just become this like amazing sought after thing. I'd love to see, Pakistan become like that and just really uplift that talent pool and continue to grow that pipeline.
Absolutely. I think the key drivers are already in play for that to happen.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Tarek, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure, discussing and getting these incredible insights for you, and I'm sure this is not going to be valuable, not just for the people, building in Pakistan, but also for those people, abroad, trying to understand what it's really like to build here in Pakistan, what's really happening in this region as well, right? It really helped us reframe the story in a way, that's grounded, global, and actionable, right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing.
We would love to have you for the second episode where, we would love to take an even deeper dive into the Pakistan's talent engine and why, it may be one of the most unappreciated advantages in the global tech landscape.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. See you next time.